we go. Hey, what's up, New Zealand and the world? Lucas Lawman's Kiwi voice back in the studio, and we have got the privilege of having the man Leighton Baker sitting with us for a conversation.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking the time to hang out with us.
It's good to be here.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to do the usual Kiwi voice style. We're going to learn a little bit about Leighton himself, and then we'll get into some political stuff. It's probably what you're all looking for, team, as well as some other bits and pieces, and see where the conversation goes. So, tell us a little bit about yourself, as much as you're comfortable with. Who is Leighton Baker?
Yeah, wish I knew. Could tell you, really.
Nice.
Look, I'm just average Kiwi lad. Left school, went and worked on a farm for a while, and then did a carpentry apprenticeship, became a builder. I've been building for the last 30 odd years.
Yep.
I'm a tradie, still on the tools most of the time, so that's how I spend my days.
Yep. Do you run your own company? Or?
Yeah, got a couple of different companies. Yep. Quite enjoy doing low energy building, so houses that require very little energy to heat. That's probably my passion.
Yeah,
what
nice.
I really enjoy doing. Yep. Simply because we're not in a bitterly cold climate, but in Canterbury here in the middle of winter, it's fresh.
Yes.
And for elderly and people, young families that really want warm, dry climates to live in, and we can build to that. We just don't, and that frustrates me. We're building junk, and we don't need to. So. That's the building side of me. Mm-hmm. I'm married, got 4 adult children and 5 wee grandchildren, and So
awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on the energy efficiency side of things. So I try and keep it separate, but I allude to it a little bit sometimes in conversation. So I work for an energy company, and so I'm in the industry. And the housing stock in New Zealand has been long talked about as being rubbish.
It is rubbish.
in terms of insulation and health outcomes. So I can see how you would have like an interest in that as opposed to it just being a job. So totally get all that. All right, so tell us a little bit about your time in politics with the New Conservatives and how that all went, and your continued interest in politics.
Yeah, so for me, the whole journey into politics is really around one topic.
Right.
And that one topic is the government has got to be accountable to the people.
Yeah.
It really has been. So I was drawn into New Conservative on that very thing, and it was around binding referenda. And simply put, the binding referenda was a tool to make the government listen to the people.
Yes.
Because even 20 years ago, it was reasonably obvious that the government didn't have to listen to the people. We have no upper house, and in between elections, we have no way to hold the government to account. So therefore, we have really an elected dictatorship. and that has progressed over time.
Yep.
And over time, political leaders had more sway over their caucus colleagues and had more control over them. And so instead of it being a representative democracy, which is what we're labelled, we actually have, as soon as the votes are cast and a new government's elected, they do what they feel like. Yeah. And obviously MMPs held that to check a wee bit. Yep. We saw that in the previous Labor government with Winston Peters in there and held them to check a wee bit. Yeah. However, once they have unbridled power, we see what we have now, which is, select committee that are so short that no one actually can get much in. They limit who can speak to them and what they can say. They decide who can share their... And so we don't have a representative democracy because the government does not listen to the people. Yeah. So that's why I got involved 20 years ago or so. And unfortunately, what we feared then is all that we see now. So you could say we're a failure, really, because we saw it coming and we haven't stopped it.
Yeah, but isn't that a lot of history, unfortunately? Yeah. And that's what is a lot of conversation that comes up in, a lot of the protest marches and the public that I talk to at different bits and pieces, and that is a lot of fear or a lot of concern about the future, and that the general public, going about their daily life, not really too bothered with all of this sort of stuff, just doesn't see it, or doesn't see it coming. And history will tell us that that's often the way until it's too late. So I completely hear what you're saying there.
It's almost cyclic in some ways.
Yes.
And that's the scary thing. For if you step back and see the cycle happening, you go, come on guys, let's not go through the whole process, whether we go through the whole process of complete failure and poverty before we get back, I don't know.
Yeah.
But this is up to the people, and I continue to say that it's up to the people. Yeah. They get to choose, and if they choose that actually we just want to go through the process, lose everything, well, that's their choice.
Well, yeah, exactly right. And that's the thing. You're the first person I've spoken to through all of these different people that has clearly put it in the same way that I think as well, and that I believe we've lost sight of the fact that the government is supposed to, they're elected by us and they're supposed to serve us. We pay them, and they're supposed to look after our tax dollars and make the right decisions based on behalf of us. Yeah. And we've completely lost sight of that. So I totally understand what you're saying there.
But the issue we get is they believe, and this is a scary thing for me, sitting beside some of them on debates and conferences, they believe once they're elected to rule. And the reality is there's 120 of them, and some of them aren't the sharpest tools on the rack. And really, some of them you wouldn't employ, some of them are really good, but they haven't got the collective wisdom to run the country. That's what a representative democracy is for. Their role is to go to the people in their electorate and say to them, hey, this is an issue that we're talking about as the government. How do you guys see it? And get their feedback. And it's how all of us develop. We talk to different people and get their different perspectives, and we go, oh, okay, I didn't think of that point, you know. And it's that unattended consequence of the government legislation that they're rushing through, and we all face it. Now, as a tradie, if I stuff up, I have to pay for it. End story. And I own the company. It's my problem. It's my fault. I got to sort it. So if I make the decision, that's fair enough. But if someone else makes the decision, I shouldn't have to wear it. And so for me, if our elected representatives are making decisions that are bad, we wear the consequence of it, and that's where it's not right. And that's why they're meant to talk to us.
Yeah, we've definitely lost accountability, and that's also a theme that was a big, strong theme through Matt King's tour down here and the conversation that we had, and that was around holding the government to account. Because you're right, they make these decisions that affect hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, and they may be the wrong decision, but then they just get to dismiss it and carry on. So,
but if we the people made the wrong decision, that's our fault. And we wear it, and we take ownership of it because we did own it, and that is where the referenda came into it, was that it gave people a choice. Now, referendum may not be the best solution, but it was one option that we were putting forward as a solution to the issue of an unaccountable government. And some governments use it really, really well. And the fact is, if you do use that system, you don't need such a big government. And my issue in New Zealand, the government wants more and more tax, right? Because they want to spend more and more, but I don't think they spend terribly well.
That's an understatement.
I'm probably not. I'm being kind. And so, really, do they need to take more tax, or do they need to spend what's taken more wisely? And I think it's the latter myself. And what we saw in Wellington was actually a great example of it. If you actually let people be involved in their local community and the solutions that they require, they'll do it quickly, they'll do it efficiently, and they'll have ownership of it. And if a problem arises, they'll fix it. Whereas if it's a top-down thing and it's all led from the top, it's incredibly slow. Very, very expensive and doesn't always work.
So you're referencing there what happened in Wellington in terms of the industrious nature of the people that were there and just responding to getting everybody comfortable and looked after and all
and
that.
Meeting the needs. What was the need? Let's meet it. No big discussion. No select committee. No,
exactly.
Another group, another formation, another person being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to sit on top and
an announcement about an announcement.
I mean, to me, that's all waste. And I guess my concern with this particular government is the government of waste. And financial waste, but moreover the waste of people. And that's the tragedy. That's the tragedy I see at the moment, is the waste of people. And it's heartbreaking.
No, I absolutely feel you. The divisive nature in New Zealand throughout the society at the moment is, I've always had an interest in politics, but like a lot of people, the last couple of years have voluntarily thrust me into that more, for that exact reason, that feeling in the air, if you want to be airy-fairy about it, it's just divisive out there. We're not unified as New Zealand always has been. We're only 5 million people.
We're tiny.
So we should be. We should be more so. And the government, this current Labour regime, government, is really doing their best to drive that wedge down the middle wherever they can, So,
and is that because, and I don't know the answer to this, I'm putting it out there for you and for your listeners to dwell on as well, really. Is that because it's too few people with too much power? Whereas if it was a collective decision, would it be more unified? So if we're making a really good collective decision, good discussion, open discussion about things, would we be more unified? Or is it because there's a small group of people that are forcing through their agenda that makes it divisive? You either support them or you are the enemy, which... It shouldn't be that way.
No, absolutely, and I think that's where this probably leads into the next point fairly well when we're talking about the one particular way of doing things, and then we've got the mis and disinformation issues that are, if you want to call them, or the project that staff ran and all of that sort of thing. That shuts down conversation. It's not helping anybody, from my opinion. And so have you experienced a bit of that yourself, whether it's online or anything at all? Trying to shut down what you were trying to say, that kind of
absolutely.
thing. Yeah,
it meant misrepresentation of who you are, knowingly, and that's the worst thing. I mean, I did one interview with a TV journalist looking at a screen for an hour, and during that time she said to me, "We don't seem like a white extremist." I said, "Look, I'm not. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a grandfather. I run businesses, I look after people. I know where you come from. I'm just your average Joe working hard to pay my tax and be a good Kiwi." Yeah. But what they put out after that was maybe 7 or 8 seconds of that interview, and the rest of it was pictorially all done to try and show us as a white extremist.
Oh, for goodness sake.
And you look and go, you knew it's not true.
Yeah.
You admitted to me that it wasn't true, but you still presented it. Why? Because it is a narrative you wanted to follow.
Yes.
And to me, unfortunately, once you see that, then everything you see on mainstream media you question, because you go, okay, what's the backstory?
Yep.
What's this person really like? Because what have you not shown us about them?
Yes.
And that is a particular... So the misinformation I see coming from not all mainstream media, and we've got to be really clear on that.
Sure,
there's some really good people out there.
Individual journalists and that.
But there is a control hierarchy in some of that mainstream media that have an agenda they want to put out, and it doesn't matter what the truth is, the story is what they're going to print.
Absolutely. Yes.
An example of that could be the way with the disinformation project.
My favourite thing to talk about.
So Chantal was number one of disinformation, but she was doing lives that went all day. So people could watch a live of exactly what was happening
and make up their own mind.
And yet that's disinformation, yet the media can take a couple of shots. Now, people got to understand, and probably most people that are watching you do, that the media during that protest time, they were in Parliament buildings. They weren't down on the ground. They were 2 stories up in Parliament buildings, shooting from a distance.
Looking down on the peasants.
And so what they've shot from a distance and their own narrative is apparently true, but what has really happened and the actual footage of what was going on the ground is false.
Yeah, crazy.
And that is what they present, and that is why the whole misinformation thing is misinformation.
Yeah.
Because unless you're totally brain dead and so sucked in by the narrative, you can see the fallacy of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And the emperor is butt naked. He's got horsehair hanging off his butt, and yet they don't want you to admit it, but that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I posted during that last day and a half in Wellington. Unfortunately, I didn't get to the protest. I'm gutted I didn't. It would have been, once in a lifetime kind of thing, I would have thought. But at any rate, I was covering it from here as much as I could. I had a friend on the ground that was sending me video and that sort of thing. And I had that exact experience that you were talking about in real time. So I had Chantal's feed and who was the other one that I was following, the Daily Examiner, that were up there on one side. And then I had Stuff's live feed from that one fixed position and their scrolling text feed, and they were just 2 totally opposite stories. It was happening in real time, and Chantal would say the odd thing, but it was generally just the video. So, like you said, it was crazy to sit here and go, but are they actually saying this? Because I can see right now that what they're saying is totally opposite of what I'm being presented over here. So, I never thought I would experience something like that.
That's a great eye-opener, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the mainstream media actually did a great favour to the people of New Zealand because they exposed how much they wanted to twist what is really going on. The scary thing is, I think some of them actually believe it. That's what scares me a little bit.
Yeah, ideology be strong in the organisation, perhaps. Yeah. Now, obviously, we won't get into huge amounts of detail with the Wellington protest. Obviously, with things that you've got going on that we need to look after. But I mean, was it overall though? Ignoring some of that other peripheral stuff, did you find it a positive experience?
I loved it.
Yeah,
I really did. I think protest is the wrong word because a protest brings up a connotation of aggression and all the rest of it, which I found it probably the most peaceful place I've been in my life. I'd walk on, so I didn't stay there, and I've been pretty upfront, I didn't actually stay there. We actually only went with a carry-on. We just rushed up there that Friday morning, jumped on the first flight with our carry-on and ended up being there for 3 weeks. So, we weren't particularly well equipped. But every day I walked on there, I just had the most amazing sense of peace. And I met the most lovely people. And that was what it was about. It was meeting the people. And we really just spent all day talking to people. hearing their stories and chatting to them and trying to come up with solutions, or just listening to them. It was the most amazing experience. Like you say, once in a lifetime. I really, really enjoyed hanging out with the people that were there.
Yeah, awesome. And as I say, I get that same similar sort of feeling at most protests that we head to at the Freedom and Rights Coalition protests and those sorts of things. Just people that are free of that burden of the system or the regime. Absolutely. Okay.
See, all the disinformation, we might as well talk about it.
Sure.
Because it happens within the freedom community too, and it's really interesting because. At the event there were some really, really good people that were working really, really hard, and then next minute, someone's bagging them over some within the community and having an absolute go at them. And you think, hold on a minute, they're on the same team. They're fighting the same battle for you. They're pushing in the same direction. They have the same end goal. Don't take them out. They're not against you, and you may not agree with all their values. And I think this is the important thing for people to understand is, I've just met you today, right? You and I will have different interests and different values and different belief systems possibly, and that's okay, we're allowed to.
Yes.
And we can discuss them at depth, and you might think I'm an absolute nutter, and I could think the same, but we're
trying to think I'm a nutter with my shoes.
No, I sort of want to go and have a look at them later, but anyway, I'm not going to go through shoe envy. But the reality is we're allowed to have differences, and it's healthy for us to have differences, and we should be able to discuss them as grown-ups.
Yeah.
And at some stage we might agree on some, and in some we may disagree, and that's actually all right. So I think the freedom community have got to understand what is the big picture, what is the real thing you want. You want the ability to decide for yourself.
Yes.
Then if that's the core focus for you, if it's the focus of someone else, they're on your team in that. They may not agree with you on everything else, but the core value you're after, which I feel for New Zealanders is, we want a constitution or some way of holding the government to account. We want the Bill of Rights to be enshrined in law, so we are protected with our rights. And we want New Zealand to retain its independency as a nation, its sovereignty, not be dictated to by foreign powers. Those are probably the three core things. There may be a couple more, but those are in essence. And so I think sometimes people are sticking the knife in or trying to twist things to get people focused on a little issue over here without understanding that virtually every person there was working on for the same team for the same reason and putting a lot of effort in. And so when we can grasp that, then we're going to be a lot better off for it, because then we can actually present that to New Zealand of saying, look, here's a group of people as diverse as you can get, ethnically and every belief system wise. However, the commonality they have, which is believing you should be allowed your belief, that we should be a sovereign nation and that the government should be accountable to us, is the strongest thing we have, and that is what we're getting in behind, and that's what we're actually standing for. And I think if the freedom community comes, that we'll be in good stead. But if we continue to look for the differences, we're stuffed, because there's differences in everything.
100%, and that's where I've really started to push Kiwi Voice towards in terms of a direction, is exactly that. So the perfect example I'll use along what you're talking about is, so I interviewed Brian Tamaki, and some of his beliefs and things, I would have never have done that 6 months ago. I just would have... But it came to me in meditation, funnily enough. I was like, I need to interview Brian Tamaki. So I contacted Derek, organised it all. But the fact of the matter is that there was more common ground than you think. Regardless of the fact that I might think some of his views are abhorrent, it doesn't matter. He's actually a really nice guy to talk to. And that was a key moment for me. And I think it's the exact thing that you're talking about. It doesn't matter what's going on with all this other peripheral stuff. We're always going to have some common ground, and we should focus on that.
And being able to discuss those other issues that you disagree on, you might be polar opposites, but able to just sit down at a table and discuss them without getting angry is actually really healthy for everyone. And you may never agree on them, but it's actually good for you to understand where those people come from. So I'm really pleased that you interviewed Brian.
So am I now.
And you'll find other people across the board like that are totally different to you, but actually have some insight and have a commonality that you'll get something from, which is great.
We're getting flickers. Absolutely. It's we've totally lost sight of it, I think, in New Zealand and society at the moment. And it's something that, as you say, that could be simplified and brought down to a common goal through a lot of the freedom community. So, it has creeped in, I would notice, last couple of months. It's been it feels like ages, but it's been a whirlwind sort of 6-9 months that I've been deeper in this kind of thing. And it has reared its head on different occasions and different things with the number of different freedom groups. So how do you think we'd tackle that? I mean, there's other meetings and things going on trying to unify parties. How do I think we tackle that?
It's conversation, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what broke it down in Wellington. It was conversation. It was people coming up and talking to you who possibly you never would have engaged in previously. Simply you move in different circles, you live in different parts of the country. People may have a preconception of who you are, but that enabled us to sit down and talk together on the commonalities and understand we're human beings. We all love New Zealand. We want the best for the nation. We may have different ideas what that looks like, but we want the best, and we know for the best to happen, we need the freedom to choose. That's what we all understood.
Yes.
And so it is that conversation around that and saying, okay, because in reality that's how Parliament's meant to work.
Yeah.
Parliament's meant to work because people come along there and they're representing different groups and they turn up at Parliament and they discuss their differences and they contest the idea that's put forward, be it a law or whatever. They contest that and they push and probe on all the wee idiosyncrasies of it and the unintended consequences to iron it out so it becomes good law. When you have this political system we have now where the leader says this is what's going to happen, doesn't matter what you think, you're voting for it, we lose that and then we get the unintended consequences, so we get foolish laws that have negative consequences and in reality, you know, we see an ineffective government because they have not achieved all the things or hardly any of the things they set out to achieve. And it's because they haven't allowed other people to come in with different ideas and say, actually, if you do that, you'll get this and this and this. This may be a better way. But by shortening the whole consultation process and not really listening to people's different opinions, they've actually shot themselves in the foot because it's made them impotent.
And the other part of that, what I'm picking up on in terms of my analysis of the whole political environment is our opposition is weak. Or has become that way. Weak's the wrong word. The opposition has sort of fallen more in line, as opposed to doing their job and challenging some of these contentious laws, and specifically the ones you might mention there, where they're going through quickly, and we're not getting any real opposition. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, I think it's to do with populism. So they're thinking ahead to the what may be used against them in the next election rather than what is their role.
Okay.
Now, the role as opposition is if you put through a policy, we are not going to have any sheep farming in New Zealand, we're just going to have cows. Okay? So why'd you do that? No. So as the opposition, I may totally agree with you, absolutely, because I like my ribeye steaks better than I like my lamb shoulder. You know, just putting it's not true, I like both. But,
nice.
But it's my job to contest that idea because by contesting it, we thrash it out. Now, at the end, when it comes to the vote, I might totally agree with you. But as opposition, it's my role to find the weaknesses in your argument, and I've got to do that even if I don't agree. It's like the old school debates that you used to be told, you know, you're supporting this and you're against it. It doesn't matter what your belief is. You're there, and that's what it's meant to be about, but we're not seeing that. In fact, the worst example we saw was with the gathering in Wellington, how all the parties came to a consensus not to come and speak to people in Wellington, and yet they're meant to be representative democracy. You cannot. I can't represent you if I refuse to talk to you. Now I don't have to agree with you, but I need to hear where you're coming from. But for them to refuse to listen to the people, there's no way they can represent them. There's no way they can understand what they're going through.
We got some token bits and pieces at some stage, didn't we? Didn't David Seymour get down there eventually, or no? Not.
I think he was outside, but
but it doesn't matter.
It wasn't. It wasn't engaging and listening to what was really happening, and you know there were people there that had lost jobs, people that had lost family members, people that had lost their health. And because of that, they actually deserved to have their representatives, who they pay tax and support, to actually just listen to their stories. Just listen to their stories and say, okay, what can we do to make this a bit easier? What have we done wrong or what have we done right, and how can we do this better? And you only find that out by listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it was the Speaker of the House or whoever's got the power to do that, and he said, "Press don't go down there, and politicians, no MPs go down there." It was just complete madness. I've also experienced it. Obviously, not quite the same thing, but with Kiwi Voice, we took off with a bit of a bang in terms of getting some high-profile people on. And so I've reached out to all sides of the aisle, and I've had declines from Labour Party MPs, from Green MPs, from New Zealand First MPs. No one wants to come on and talk, and because I cover protests, because I'm an anti-vaxxer or whatever. You
didn't tell me that before I come on.
Sorry, you're gonna have to get some space. So. And I think that's sort of another representation in a small way, maybe, of exactly what's going on, and that they're losing the sight of that, the fact that they are meant to be serving the people. So,
well, what they're saying is, because you don't 100% agree with me, I'm not going to talk to you.
Yeah.
Well, that's That's probably what you do in kindergarten.
Yeah,
Isn't it? Like,
yes,
surely
yes.
you think someone that is actually in Parliament has got the idea of what representation and democracy is. But when they revert back to, if I don't agree with me, I'm not going to talk to you.
Yeah.
A bit like our Prime Minister who said, I only talk to accredited media.
Yeah, it was madness.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're the representation for this country.
Yeah.
There's only 5 million, like you say, and you can't actually talk to anyone unless they're on your team.
Yes.
That is ridiculous.
It is crazy. I've actually investigated trying to somehow get into, I'm sure a lot of other independent media people have as well, getting into the press corps and being able to actually stand in front of her and ask her a question. And it's just a nightmare. There's no way that's going to happen.
So free press, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In the States, I did learn that you can actually have someone like myself that can just walk in off the street, get searched, make sure we've got no guns, and they can go in there.
Yep.
Like, we should have that. And you say, why don't we have that? That's bizarre that we don't.
So that's a really good question. Why don't we have the freedom of access with the press? Why is the press... And who actually determines whether they're legitimate or not?
Exactly.
And so if you answer yes to these 3 questions, you're allowed in.
There were a couple of examples at Wellington, and they had held some kind of service or something out the back of Parliament buildings away from the protest, and a couple of people from Independent View and Free NZ, I think Liz Gunn's outfit, came wandering through that, and they were just... security just blocked them off, and they're like, we just want to film what you guys are saying, and we should be able to do that. But and as it's just one of many examples. It's constantly like that. So it's another issue, the press side of things. We get flickers. We'll deal with that. Okay, so look, let's move on slightly from that. We'll touch on a little bit of actually what came up in that piece of conversation there, and around some of the global bodies. And the concern that people have around that. So, I mean, do you have any thoughts around what's happening worldwide with our involvement with the UN, WEF, the WHO, all of that stuff? Have you got thoughts around that, or any concerns, or what's going on there?
I have genuine concerns around there, simply because what we're being told by these organisations... For the UN, for example, before the UN, we had the League of Nations, right? So League of Nations, after the First World War, League of Nations formed, but the problem is the states pulled out. So they agreed to it and they pulled out and they weren't part of it. So it was a reasonably ineffective group. I think it was only 50-something. It could be wrong, but about 50. So after the Second World War, they folded and we got the United Nations. And the whole goal of the United Nations was peaceful dialogue, which is great. And in reality, we haven't had a Third World War. So you could say, in that way, they've been successful. But the United Nations is not elected. The representatives are elected by the people, and it's become far more socially controlling and socially active than this. The leaders getting together to talk. So it's not actually so often the leaders getting together to talk. It's other people constituting and bringing things into place that they want to see and they want to bring onto other nations. And to me, the amount of money and time and energy that goes in there isn't really rewarded. I look at the war in Ukraine. If the United Nations was anything, why didn't they just fill it up with peacekeepers? Just peacekeepers, nothing.
Or why weren't they leading a conversation about potential diplomatic solutions? Doesn't seem to be any.
There was nothing. So I think they've got so involved in themselves, they're so inwardly looking and so embroiled with their own power that they're actually doing the job. And so then they're ineffective, and so why should we give them money? So I don't think the UN is terribly effective. Well, maybe it is effective in what they want to do, but not effective in what I think their role should be, which is the world peace and dialogue amongst leaders to actually minimise conflict. And so I think that's the core business, and I don't do it. The World Health Organization, obviously, for what's gone on over the last 2 years, I have lost any trust or faith in them, simply for what I've seen myself, my own witness to what's gone on. I've lost any faith in that organisation. And I think the trouble is, if we break it down, if one person or one group of people has too much power, then they're too easily manipulated, controlled, bribed, corrupted, whatever. And the issue there is because they have so much power, that affects so many other people. So to dilute that or to stop that, what you need to do is dilute power. And so disperse power so everyone has a bit more authority themselves. And if you've got... I think the binding referenda helped that, because if all of New Zealand chose something, then there's no one that can be bribed to stop it. Because all of New Zealand have chosen it, it's binding on the government. The government can go, well, I'm sorry, we can't do anything about it because the people of New Zealand have chosen this particular path.
But if it's out even,
But if it's a few people in leadership, which is the style we see at the moment, Our Prime Minister makes a decision, she enforces amongst the 5 or so under her, they enforce it down, and we get this top-down structure. Then that's too easy manipulated, controlled, whether it's corrupt or not, or whether it's just an ideology, and it affects too many other people. And it's the same with these organisations, I feel. There's too much power within those organisations, and it just takes someone with a whack idea or belief in their own perfection that we're sort of stuffed.
Yeah, and are you familiar with the spoken about a lot recently? I'm going to do a separate video on it actually. But the amendments to the IHR international health regulations with the WHO. People are saying the treaty, technically not so a treaty, but are you familiar with that?
I mean, again, why shouldn't an international body decide what happens in your country? Particularly when we see what's happened over the last pandemic. There's a whole lot. So my issue with it is, where's the balance of discussion? Yes. So where is it? In New Zealand,
it's all happening over there.
In New Zealand, we're told this is the only way that's going to solve it. There was nothing about looking after your own health, about vitamins or natural, nothing about any of that. There was just, this is the only way, and you must do it. There's no, and to me, you're stuffed.
Yes.
Because their freedom of choice is gone.
Yeah. And the one size fits all thing.
One size, it doesn't work. No. And it doesn't work it doesn't work worldwide, it doesn't work in a nation, it doesn't work, just you've got to get down to individuals having choice what works for them. So I disagree that I get far too much power, far too much authority in too smaller group of people. And yes, if they're all perfect people and they're the best interests of everyone at heart and they're listening really carefully, maybe it would work. But human nature isn't like that.
Exactly.
It just isn't. And we've got to be aware of that. And I mean, we are people. We make bad decisions. We do stupid things. We get led down the wrong way sometimes. So we actually have to have a spread out of decision making to accommodate the fact that we all make bad choices.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I totally agree with you. It is the theme continuing to come through here is very much, open the conversation, bring the power closer to the people. There's all sorts of different. Well, let's go on that path. There's all sorts of different thoughts and theories around what we could do to actually change the political system as people. What would suit the people better or serve the people better. One of my favourite ones, I'm a fan of Russell Brand, for example, and he talks about, much more on a global scale, but distributed democracy. Yep. So essentially just bringing it down to even just say a council level, for example. And every single council is like a state. And they can do whatever they like based on the referenda of the people or however they choose to engage with the people. And every different part of New Zealand will have their own way of doing things based on their smaller group of people, and if you don't like where you are, you can shift somewhere else easily enough to that ideology of those people, etc. So that's one idea. Have you had any discussions or any thoughts around how we could change things and make things better?
Yeah, so what gives people power?
It's
the control.
Yes.
Control gives them power, whether it's control of your resources, your food, your water, your finance.
Yeah.
And so what we have now is a top-down control method of governance, and you must do what you're told or you'll lose privileges. And the more you go socialism, the more control that gets.
Yeah.
So what really works is empowerment, which is a bottom-up model, which is those that have the authority are empowering people to succeed. So they're saying, so for a council level, in our community, what are our strengths and weaknesses? What can we do as a community to help people succeed? So it's not them doing it. It's them making or providing an environment where people can succeed. And when you do that, everybody has a part to play.
Yes.
So when you get top down, there's a lot of people that discard they don't have a part to play because that top down is this is what we're going to do, and if you don't fit in this, you're actually not needed. Which doesn't work because you get disenfranchised people, and you don't get people working to their strengths. So it's a very uneconomic model because it wastes so much. Whereas when it's bottom up and you're encouraging people to do their best, whatever their skill level is, then actually everyone's involved. It's a much more economic model and you get a lot more done for less. So definitely a bottom-up structure. Part way to do it is to disempower that top-down structure, and that's taking the control of the tax off them. So taxation staying in your local communities.
Right.
And there's different ways you can do that. And look, we might as well throw ideas out here.
Sure.
No one can throw rocks at us
absolutely.
Through the mic, can they?
Get amongst it.
Yeah, I hope not. Yeah. And this is an idea that's been floated, and I can't say this will work, all right? But it's just an idea. So if I offend you, you can kick me out of your house.
It'd take a lot to offend me.
Oh, crikey. That's good. I've got a chance. There's the every transaction tax that we have spoken about before. So what happens there is every single financial transaction incurs a 0.5% or 1% tax. But that's the only tax. And so if you're on $1,000 a week, you'd pay $10 tax. or $20. $10 as it came into your account, and $10 as it left. Because you generally, the money comes into your account and you spend it, right? So as a transaction, one lump sum as it comes out, a whole lot of little transactions going out. But basically that $1,000 comes in and goes out. 10% of $1,000, $100, so you pay $200. Okay? Sorry, no, $200, 10%. You paid $20. Yeah. 1%, 2% of your whole income. But what it does, it catches every single transaction of every company and every business. And so the more you earn, the more you pay in tax. But that's okay, because it's still relative. What it doesn't take account for is financial transactions in regards to buying and selling finance money. So the money market. So the money market is not based on 0.5%. It's tiny percentages, but on mass amounts. So people buying and selling bulk amounts of money at tiny percentages to get their income. So that would disappear off New Zealand shores if we did that. Because obviously if you're only making 0.25% and you're paying 0.5% for the transaction, it's a no-brainer. It's not going to work. So the question there is, how much of the transactions in New Zealand every day are actually transactions on the money market, and what's the value of them? Because, you know, we got given some figures of what the value was of transactions in New Zealand, and that's where we came up with, 0.5% of every transaction would be more than enough. But if 50% of all transactions are on the money market, well, then you've got to double it. If 90% of the value, because it's big amounts, if it's happening that much and 90% of it, then obviously the taxation's got to go up. But that way we'd do away with PAYE, with GST, with company tax, with fringe benefit tax. It would just be every transaction. The government gets paid every day. Every day the bank would put in, there's your 1% of transactions today, in the money coffers, regular income for them. And that could be allocated in your area.
And that gets to enough of a level, that amount of taxation is equal to or greater than what they
on those calcs we're given and the funds we're given, but we weren't given a split of how much is on the money market. And that is the elephant in the room in regards to that taxation. But there are other ways we can do taxation that may work a bit better. But so then that tax, where does it go? Well, what about if it went into your local area? Now, if it gets into the area where it's spent, that may not be equal, because some areas may have much richer people doing a whole lot of bigger transactions. So maybe it goes into a central coffer and goes into each area equally or something like that. But it goes into a local area, and the local area is responsible for all their roads. They're responsible for the education. Because, at the moment, you've got one education system, and they're saying this education system for everyone, and it just doesn't work.
It doesn't.
It's a failure. I mean, we look at the stats now of the kids that can't read and write. And we look at the fact that we're not empowering young people that are hands-on learners. So when you divest that, and so this area is looking after its education, and you live next door to that area, and you go, hold on, that's brilliant. I love that. I'm going to send my kid there. Or how do we do that?
Exactly.
It actually builds you up. And then as a group in one area, you're looking at how do we do this best. So you're looking at what other areas you're doing. You're looking internationally. You're trying to build the best system for your community, because it's your community. It's your children. It's your grandchildren. And by you actually putting the effort, and other people are gleaning off you. And so it just gets better and better, not worse and worse, which is we see now. That top-down control is you must do it this way, and if you don't do it this way, you're a failure. And it's not working.
No, you're exactly right. Again, I agree with you, and thought about that same thing recently as well, around those centralised government systems. It all essentially comes back to the fact, as you've continued to allude to, is that the more power there is in one place, the easier it is to spot the failures, essentially, as it comes down through the different parts of the system. So I'm with you on that one. It would be a huge job, of course, to sort of try and have this shift, or would it, if we got the right people in? If you get the right people into power before they get corrupted, and we can make some changes that way, perhaps. But I appreciate your thoughts on that. So more generally, and that leads into this quite well, I think. Tell me your thoughts around the current state of New Zealand societally and politically and socially, and you spent most of your life in New Zealand, or
all of it. Yeah.
All of it.
Well, apart from the odd sojourn overseas every now and then, but most of it. It's all been here, born here.
So, and you would have noticed over the years things change, and how does it feel on a whole picture scale at the moment for you?
I think the problem we have in New Zealand is less connectivity between people. People are more isolated. Obviously, the pandemic's made a huge part to play with that. But they're isolated, and they're less willing to actually listen to each other than what has been experienced, I believe, in my short few years on Earth. And I think part of that's the lack of local involvement.
Yeah.
And that's the centralised power again. That's one more of those paybacks we get from centralised power, is not having people involved in the local community.
Yeah.
Whereas if they are involved, then it's actually really good for them. So the other thing we've had too much talk of is our rights and we'll push for what I want and me, and it doesn't actually work. If you're selfish, you're lonely. It's just almost a mathematical calculation. Your best mates are the ones that are giving, the ones that give out, and the most popular people are the ones that help others, because they're not selfish. So the biggest thing, if you're suffering, the whole despondency of poor me, the best thing to do is go and help someone else.
Yes.
And what a more community involvement is, allows people to do that. So they're not focused on their lack or their needs or what they're missing out on. They're looking at what they can do for others, and it's an outward look. And I think more community involvement allows for that. See, for instance, at the moment, your local school wants to do something. The amount of rigmarole, it's all got to come from top down and get the finance. Whereas in the old days, back in the day, they had their 12 hours up in the cardboard box in the middle of the road.
It walked 8 Ks to school and must bare feet in the snow.
But the local community would say, hey, look, we want a tennis court at school. Well, let's do a bit of fundraising. And Bob, he's got a tractor and he'll come down and grade it. And Sammy, he's got a link to artificial grass. And Julie does fencing. And before you know, you get a tennis court. And it's cost the school diddly squat. They've done a couple of sausage sizzles and a bric-a-brac.
Yes.
Well, you're not allowed to do sausage sizzles because it's a health risk. You can't have a bric-a-brac sale. You can't do this. You can't do that. You're not allowed to do anything. And so then you can't actually raise any money because you're not allowed to do anything. And then no one's allowed to be involved because I know someone might get hurt. And so then, so central government's got to appoint a consultant. The consultant's going to engage engineers. They've got to get some contractors together. Next thing, it's a $20 million thing. And what happens in that? The kids miss out.
Yes, yeah.
But that local involvement gets people involved, and everyone can make something for the sausage sizzle and the cake stall and everything else. So we've lost that community.
Yes.
Our top-down and our absolute fear of any harm is destroying us as a community because we're too scared to do anything.
Yeah, and that's been another real unfortunate side effect is the right word, or consequence of the response over the last couple of years. I mean, even when we got to the point where we understood COVID more and understood that it just wasn't deadly as the way that we initially thought. I mean, I don't know, maybe 2 months into it is before I sort of started to wake up to what was going on. But even initially I was concerned and lockdown was almost a novelty and then, but like I think majority of people, and then like I say, even when we discovered that it wasn't so bad, we still stayed scared and we still continued down that path, and here we are today. We're walking to Edgeworth and Albans and does my head in because 90% of people got masks on outside and in the car on their own and all the rest of it because of the fear. How do you think we deal with that? That's a big question. How do you think we deal with the fear that's been pushed through New Zealand society? How do we overcome that sort of carry on?
I actually did a wee talk about that the other day, really. It's almost like a cult's been established in New Zealand.
That is, but yeah.
So how does a cult work? Well, you have a charismatic leader.
Yep.
That charismatic leader surrounds themselves with people that will enforce their view. Yep. In this case, we have mainstream media. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Enforce, anyone that disagrees is demonised or ostracised.
Yep.
Massive amounts of propaganda are pushed to make the leader's view known, and everyone's got to abide by it. There's severe discipline if you don't. Even if you're in the inner circle, if you work out things wrong and disagree, you're ostracised immediately. I mean, all those things we see. We see it here in New Zealand. And there's a lack of logic. You're not allowed to have open and frank discussions. Have you seen a debate on television between for and against scientific voices?
It's so bizarre that's never happened.
So if you stand up and say, actually, I'm concerned because I'm seeing this and this, which doesn't correlate with what the government's saying, there's no sit down, here's an open debate on television where you can listen, just make your own judgment. That person's wrong, they're demonised, they're not a voice, they're anti-vaxxer, so we're not going to listen to them. It doesn't matter how logical, how reasoned, how much experience they've got, where they've come from, if they don't agree with the government, they're demonised.
Yes.
So that cult thing causes fear because you're told not to trust anyone that doesn't agree with the government. And dob a mate in if he doesn't agree with the government.
That's bananas.
Dob a mate in if they're not wearing a mask. And yet, as far as I understand, the N95 mask container itself says it doesn't stop viruses. But we're told you must do this. And we're told it's for health reasons. And yet the reality is, if someone has a terrible reaction to the vaccine, they're still made to get the next one for health reasons. That's illogical.
Yes.
But people still buy into that and think, it's because the government's telling us it's good. Well, we've actually got to get people to stop and think.
Yes.
And I think there's 3 ways you do that. You do that by asking questions.
Yep.
You do that by humour. And there's some pretty funny comedians doing some pretty funny stuff. There's some really funny memes going around, which is just using humour to get
a message.
To prove that the emperor's naked.
Yes.
My goodness, it's amazing how that shows his nipples sticking out in the cold.
I love it.
It's so there's got to be humour. There's got to be asking questions and getting people to ask the questions, and we've got to be able to speak the truth.
Having open, again, a lot of this always seems to come back to open conversation, Leighton. It's really it. And I think that the censorship that's occurred in so many different ways, some of our leading doctors, for example, or if someone says, I think someone, where was he now? Central Hawke's Bay, I think, and I forget the guy's name, doctor. But, I think ivermectin could be useful in early stages and I might get some. And then he gets his licence taken off and shut down. And what it does is it doesn't actually help the government's cause. It actually just makes people more suspicious. And as a result, we've seen outlets like myself and Chantel's and others just explode because people want to they go search it out. So if they weren't before, the government's done themselves a disservice if they want to look at it that way. They're going to now. Because why was that guy censored? Or why was that lady censored? Or whatever. So it's bizarre that they haven't clicked onto that and continued down this path, but it is really that conversation. As you say, it always comes back to the conversation. If we can find a way to appeal to people, to just think a bit more critically, to open your mind to other ways of thinking, then absolutely, that's where we need to go.
And it would be sad, but it may come to the point where there has to be a court case against the government to take them to task and make them provide the evidence for what they've done. And be able to provide the evidence that we believe is valid for what they've done wrong.
Yes.
And I don't really want that because to me it's just a waste of money in courts. But it may have to happen if the government continue to disallow any open discussion.
Yes, you're exactly right. I mean, they've had some small, or the people have had some small wins. Obviously the key one that we all reference is the Defence Force and Police having their mandates ruled unlawful, although they didn't seem to change a heck of a lot.
They have now.
Now.
So the Defence Force have dropped their appeal.
Got you.
They're reinstating unvaccinated officers.
Awesome.
In New Zealand are reinstating unvaccinated pilots.
Yep. Excellent.
Because they're realising there's no logical reason, there was no scientific data to support their position.
Yep.
And the courts have recognised that.
Yep.
So as that flows through, you would hope there'd be some honesty and integrity on that, and them saying, actually, what we did wasn't right. We didn't have the mandate to do it. We didn't have the scientific data to support our position on that.
Yep.
That doesn't happen at the moment. It's all happening in the quiet, just quietly letting people in. But
how powerful would that be if they went up to the podium of truth and said, sorry, we kind of cocked this up, we weren't correct about this and that, but it won't solve at all, of course not, but it would still be really powerful for them to just
bring healing. It brings a lot of healing to the nation, because I spoke about waste earlier. To me, the tragic waste is I met this guy 40 years as a paramedic. 40 years, you can't buy that experience. Pilots, I heard on the radio advertising, you're going to take longer to get met by St John's. Why? Because they're short of paramedics. But these paramedics got sacked because they wouldn't take.
Yes.
It's illogical. Hospitals short of nurses.
Yeah.
I went to a place that does apple juice, and there's a nurse 25 years in Burwood Hospital stacking apple crates.
Oh goodness.
That to me is insensical.
Yeah.
Pilots picking fruit.
Yes.
Are you for real? That's waste.
Yes.
Because these people are keen, they're passionate, they're really, really good at their jobs, and simply because they didn't totally agree with that health choice, you're saying they're useless. Teachers. Yeah. Really good teachers. I mean, a teacher 30 years at one school. gone. And you think, hold on, that's illogical and unreasonable.
Yep.
And how does it really, are you really looking at the consequences here? And so that is the huge waste that has happened, and I think there needs to be an apology to those people.
Yeah.
Because what happened to them is wrong.
Yeah, for sure. There was some politicking around it, as you would expect, in regards to some of those. As soon as that decision came out about the police and Defence Force, and National jumped up there and said, "Oh, great! Now we can get all these police back on the beat." And I was like, "Hang on, mate! You've been standing there for the last year." Pushing these mandates and supporting these mandates, and now it's typical games. It's a real shame, and it is a waste. They did do the reversal where they were letting COVID positive nurses back into the hospital,
but not unvaccinated.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just not logical either. I mean,
crazy.
It's almost like you have to turn your brain off to be involved in the government, and it shouldn't be like that. We don't want that in governance. We want people that are sharp, that are honest, that are willing to have that discussion. But it's almost like when you're not allowed that to be in government. You've got to shut down, shut up, do as you're told, and not discuss or debate anything. That's a worry for me.
Yeah, it's a real concern. And how do you think, as we get towards the end of our interview time here, so how do you think it's all going to play out between now and the next election?
I have no idea, just like anyone else. So how does it? You think it's going to play? No idea. What would you like to see happen?
Okay, that's a better question.
That's a different question.
Yeah.
What I would like to see happen over the next few months is a team develop of people that can articulately express the views of the freedom community in Parliament being formed to be the baton holders for the freedom community and when it comes to the vote next year.
Yeah, right.
So forget all the different parties, and there's heaps of them.
Yes.
Forget them all and have a group of what you'd call... you could call it the A team, the dream team, whatever, but the people most suited to go to Parliament who could be opposition spokespeople or even spokespeople on defence, on education, all those different sectors, and actually form it so that the freedom community go, okay, I don't have to put away my party affiliation, but these are the best people to represent us, and these are the ones we want in there. So that's what I would like.
Oh, so you're saying thinking of potentially some freedom-minded people getting amongst some of the parties that would traditionally get elected to Parliament?
They can do that as well, but I'm talking about a group that would stand as one group to be voted for to get into Parliament.
As independent candidates within the...
It could be independent or could be a new party. I'm not really too fussed on that. But what we do need is a cohesive voice.
Yeah.
And we haven't at the moment. We've got a fractured voice, and that fractured voice won't get anywhere. Yeah. That's the reality of it.
Yeah, 100%.
It just won't. And part of that fractured voice is people holding on to the differences rather than agreeing on the commonalities, which we're right back where we started from.
Yes.
If we can concentrate on the commonalities and what our true goals are, we can make a difference in New Zealand. Yeah. If we hold on to our little bits and pieces on the side, we're going to fail dismally and make no difference. Yeah. That's how I see it panning out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's pretty much the most common comment that I get on Kiwi Voice and in person, and that is we need to unite. All the minor parties is what's the usual, but it's the same theory. We need to stop the division within the freedom community. We need to unite everyone, and those questions just keep coming up, and those comments just keep coming up. So hopefully we will see some of that.
It's happening. Yes. It is happening. There is good discussions happening amongst people in the freedom community. Yep. There's still more people out there that should be involved and would be better in Parliament. Yep. Parliament's a funny thing. I mean, I'm a builder, right? So. Why should I go to Parliament? What a waste of time. You know what I mean? Like, do I like sitting in a room talking all day and going to endless meetings? It's not really my cup of tea. I'm much better suited being outside on the building site. So there are people in New Zealand who would be really well suited to be in there, who are articulate, who are outside the box thinkers, creative. Those are the ones we need in Parliament. Okay, so it's finding those right people, and to find those right people, we probably need a group of independent. Wise old heads in the freedom community get together and go, okay, how do we coordinate a different group and actually handpick the people that we see would be the most effective in there.
Yeah, cool. I think that's a good way to finish, because it probably answers the last question I was going to push you in towards around political career. So that's awesome. Hey, it's been really, really cool talking to you. As I said, the hours just disappeared. Perhaps we could get you on again at some stage in the future. We'll keep in touch. It's been really cool. So thanks, Alex.
Oh, thanks for the coffee.
Glad you enjoyed it.
Okay.
Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Awesome. Alrighty. So 54 minutes here. We're going to